A mother's desperation. Sarella clutched her frail son, Terran, close to her chest as the dim light of her home planet's dying sun cast long shadows across the empty streets. The Xalian world, once vibrant with life and energy, was now eerily quiet. The plague had drained the life from the planet, leaving its people desperate and hopeless. Terran's shallow breathing was a cruel reminder of how little time was left. Sarella's heart ached as she watched her son. His once bright skin had dulled, and his glowing eyes, a signature of their race, flickered weakly. She had tried everything, every ancient remedy, every modern treatment. Nothing worked. The Xalian elders had declared that the plague was unstoppable, and many families had already resigned themselves to fate. But Sarella was not like them. She refused to lose her son. In the quiet hours of the night, Sarella overheard whispers among the elders about a distant planet, Earth. They spoke of human medicine, a science said to be both primitive and extraordinary. Though the Xalian Council forbade any contact with Earth, rumors claimed humans had conquered diseases far worse than the plague consuming their world. Sarella's mind raced. If there was even the slightest chance Earth's medicine could save Terran, she had to take it. Her people called the humans dangerous, unpredictable, and violent, but Sarella saw them differently. They were survivors, just like her. And if they had the knowledge to save her son, she would find a way to get it, no matter the cost. The next morning, Sarella visited the ancient hangar where her family's starship was hidden. The ship, a relic from the Xalian exploration age, had not flown in decades. Its sleek silver surface was covered in dust, but Sarella knew it still worked. She spent hours preparing it, loading it with supplies and activating its long-dormant systems. Every moment she spent away from Terran felt like a dagger in her heart, but she knew this was the only way to save him. When the ship's engines finally roared to life, the sound echoed across the barren landscape. A few elders arrived, their faces a mix of shock and anger. "Sarella, what are you doing?" one of them demanded. "You cannot leave. The council forbids it." She stood tall, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. "I will not let my son die while hope exists. If the council will not act, I will." The elders tried to stop her, warning her of the dangers ahead. Earth was a forbidden world for a reason, they said. Humans were unpredictable, and their military forces would destroy any alien ship that dared approach. But Sarella had already made her decision. She climbed into the cockpit, sealing the door behind her. As the ship lifted off, Sarella glanced down at her planet one last time. Her home was a graveyard now, a place of sorrow and loss. She whispered a silent promise to Terran, who lay in a stasis pod in the ship's medical bay. "I will bring you back to life, my son. I will not fail you." The journey to Earth was fraught with tension. Sarella had to navigate through asteroid fields and avoid patrols from nearby star systems. She studied everything she could about Earth from the ship's outdated database. The humans were a curious species. They were warlike yet compassionate, capable of great destruction, but also great kindness. Sarella didn't know which version of humanity she would encounter, but she had no choice. As she approached Earth's orbit, the ship's sensors detected several satellites and military installations. Sarella knew she couldn't hide her arrival. The humans would see her, and they would react. She took a deep breath and sent a simple transmission in the human language she had practiced during her journey. "This is Sarella of the Xalian race. I seek help for my son. He is dying. Please, I beg you." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarella's hands trembled as she waited for a response. Then, the ship's alarms blared, signaling that Earth's defense systems had locked onto her. She quickly calculated her options. Landing on Earth without permission was a dangerous gamble, but staying in orbit would mean certain death. Sarella made her choice. She activated the ship's cloaking shields and descended into Earth's atmosphere, aiming for a remote desert far from human cities. The ship shuddered violently as it entered the planet's thick air, and for a moment, Sarella feared it would tear apart. But the ship held together, and soon, She was gliding over a barren landscape of sand and rock. When the ship finally touched down, Sorella felt a brief surge of relief, but she knew the danger was far from over. The humans would come looking for her, and she had no idea how they would react. Still, she had made it this far. For Terran's sake, she would face whatever came next. As Sorella stepped out of the ship, the scorching sun beat down on her. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, and the only sound was the faint rustle of the wind. She held her head high, her determination unshaken. "This is for you, my son," she whispered, her voice filled with resolve. "No one will stop me from saving you." The fight for Terran's life had only just begun. Crossing enemy lines, the shimmering desert heat danced in waves around Sorella's ship as it rested on the barren earth. Inside, Sorella monitored her son, Terran, lying motionless in the stasis pod. His breathing was shallow, his condition worsening. The faint glow of the pod reflected her determination. She had landed, but now came the true challenge: convincing humanity to help her. Outside the ship, Earth's defense systems had already detected the unauthorized entry. Deep in an underground command center, a team of military officers analyzed the sudden breach. Alarms blared and red lights flashed as reports of the alien ship spread across global networks. General Marcus Hale, a seasoned leader with a sharp mind and little patience for surprises, stared at the holographic projection of the unidentified vessel. "What do we know about it?" Hale asked, his voice calm but commanding. A young officer replied, "It's not like anything we've seen before, sir. Energy readings are off the charts, and its cloaking technology bypassed our early warning systems. We only caught it when it descended into the atmosphere." "An invasion," Hale mused, his jaw tightening. "Scramble a response team. I want that ship surrounded within the hour." Meanwhile, Sorella worked quickly. Her ship's sensors warned her of approaching human forces. She adjusted her translator, ensuring her message could be understood. Humans were known for their fear of the unknown. She needed to appear non-threatening, desperate, not dangerous. Taking a deep breath, Sorella activated the communication system and sent another transmission. "Humans, I mean no harm. My name is Sorella. I am here to seek help for my son. He is dying, and only your medicine can save him. Please, I beg you, show mercy." The transmission reached Earth's global monitoring stations. It was played and replayed, spreading across the internet like wildfire. People were captivated by the alien's voice, soft, melodic, and filled with unmistakable desperation. Public opinion divided quickly. Some called for immediate action to help the alien, while others feared it was a trap. Among those who heard the message was Dr. Evan Carter, a leading biologist specializing in infectious diseases. Sitting in his cluttered lab, he froze when he heard the alien's plea on a breaking news broadcast. "A plague, and they think we can help," he muttered, intrigued. His scientific curiosity was ignited, but his instincts warned him that getting involved would be dangerous. Carter's thoughts were interrupted by a knock on his door. Two military officers stood there, grim-faced. "Dr. Carter, General Hale has requested your presence." Now. Within hours, Carter was on a military transport heading toward the desert. As the helicopter hovered above the alien ship, Carter couldn't believe his eyes. The sleek, organic design of the vessel was unlike anything in Earth's arsenal. He felt a mix of awe and unease. On the ground, soldiers surrounded the ship, their weapons trained on its entrance. Tanks and drones formed a wide perimeter, ready for any sign of hostility. General Hale stood at the front, barking orders. "Remember, we don't fire unless provoked," Hale commanded. "But stay alert. This could be a trick." The tension was palpable as Sorella stepped out of her ship. Her tall, slender frame shimmered faintly under the sun, her translucent skin reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors. She carried Terran in her arms, his fragile body wrapped in a protective cocoon. The soldiers tensed, their fingers on the triggers of their weapons. "Please," Sorella said, her voice trembling but clear through the translator device. "I need your help. My son, he will die without it." General Hale stepped forward, his expression cold and unreadable. "We don't know who you are, what you want, or why you're here. For all we know, this is an invasion tactic." Carter, standing behind the line of soldiers, pushed forward. "Wait, let me speak to her." Hale hesitated but nodded, allowing Carter to approach. The scientist stood before Sorella, studying her closely. Despite the alien features, the elongated limbs, the glowing eyes, he saw something deeply familiar, a mother's desperation. "I'm Dr. Evan Carter," he said. "What's wrong with your son?" Sorella hesitated, glancing nervously at the armed soldiers. "A plague has swept through my world. Our healers have failed. Your people, humans, are said to have cured diseases that no other species could. I beg you, help him." Carter looked at Terran, his small body barely moving. Something about the child's condition struck him as eerily familiar. "I'll need to run tests," he said. "If you let me examine him, I might be able to help." "No," Hale interjected. "We don't know what this creature is carrying. For all we know, it could be bringing the plague here." Carter turned to the general, his voice firm. "If that child dies, we'll never know what we missed. What if this is our chance to learn something extraordinary, something that could save lives, human or otherwise?" Hale's jaw clenched, but he gave a reluctant nod. "Fine, but she stays under guard. One wrong move, and we take her down." Sorella followed Carter into a mobile lab hastily set up nearby. As he began his analysis, she stayed close to Terran, her eyes never leaving him. "Please," she whispered to Carter. "You must save him. He is all I have." Carter nodded, his mind racing as he worked. "I'll do everything I can, but you have to trust me." Outside the lab, the soldiers watched the ship warily. In the distance, news helicopters began arriving, capturing the unfolding drama. Across the world, billions of humans were glued to their screens, watching the alien mother's plea for help. Some saw it as a chance for unity, while others feared the worst. Inside the lab, Carter made a startling discovery. The pathogen attacking Terran's body bore similarities to a rare human disease eradicated decades ago. The realization sent a chill down his spine. "This might actually work," Carter whispered, hope flickering in his voice. But he knew the road ahead would not be easy. As night fell over the desert, the fragile alliance between Sorella and humanity was just beginning, and so was the storm of conflict that would follow. Fragile alliances. The mobile lab was a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Evan Carter worked tirelessly, analyzing the pathogen attacking Terran's fragile body. Outside, the air buzzed with tension as soldiers kept their weapons trained on the alien ship. Floodlights illuminated the desert, casting long shadows that made the entire scene feel like a moment frozen in time. Sorella sat beside Terran's stasis pod, her glowing eyes fixed on his frail form. She barely noticed the armed guards stationed at every corner of the lab. Her world had shrunk to the rhythm of her son's shallow breathing and the human scientist's determined efforts. "How is he?" Sorella asked, her voice trembling. Carter didn't look up from his microscope. "It's complicated. The pathogen attacking his body shares similarities with a disease we eradicated decades ago, but your biology is different. I need more time to figure this out." Sorella nodded, her hope hanging by a thread. Time is something he does not have. Outside, the tension among the soldiers was palpable. General Hale paced near the perimeter, his eyes never leaving the alien ship. He was a man who trusted control, and this situation was anything but controlled. The alien mother had surrendered without resistance, but that only made him more suspicious. "This isn't just some mother saving her kid," Hale muttered to his second-in-command. "It's too convenient. What if this is reconnaissance? What if she's the first wave of an invasion?" His deputy, Captain Rourke, hesitated. "Sir, the woman doesn't seem hostile. The kid, he's dying. I think she's telling the truth." Hale's sharp glare silenced any further argument. We don't take chances, not with alien threats. Inside the lab, Carter finally looked up from his work. I might have something, he said, his voice a mix of excitement and hesitation. Your son's body is rejecting the pathogen, but it's too weak to fight back. If I can synthesize a serum using human antibodies, there's a chance it could save him. Sorella's eyes lit up. You can do it. I think so, Carter replied. But I'll need samples from Earth's medical archives. The original strain of this disease was stored in a facility far from here. Getting access won't be easy. Sorella stood, her determination renewed. Tell me what you need. I will get it. Carter frowned. It's not that simple. The facility is heavily guarded, and with the military already on edge about your presence, they won't just hand over classified materials to a civilian, let alone an alien. Before Sorella could respond, the lab door swung open, and General Hale strode in, his presence like a thunderclap. What's going on here? He demanded, his eyes narrowing at Carter. I think I can save the boy, Carter said firmly. But I need access to a secure medical facility to retrieve the original strain of the pathogen. Hale's lips curled into a scowl. Absolutely not. We're not risking national security for an alien experiment. Carter stepped forward, his voice rising. This isn't just about them. If this pathogen evolves and spreads, it could threaten us too. You're not just risking their lives, you're risking everyone's. The tension in the room was suffocating. Sorella, sensing the hostility, stepped between the two men. General Hale, she said calmly, her translator echoing her plea. I understand your fears, but I swear to you, I am not your enemy. I only want to save my son. Let us work together. Hale stared at her, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to Carter. You have 48 hours. Get what you need. But if anything goes wrong, it's on you. As the general left, Sorella turned to Carter. What happens now? Carter sighed. Now we figure out how to get into that facility without causing a global panic. Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Sorella and Carter boarded an unmarked military transport. Hale had reluctantly agreed to let them retrieve the samples, but insisted on sending a small team of soldiers to monitor them. Sorella felt the weight of their distrust, but she knew there was no other way. The transport hummed quietly as it sped toward the medical facility. Inside, Sorella studied Carter. He was an enigma to her, a human who chose to help rather than fear. Why do you do this? She asked suddenly. Carter looked at her, surprised by the question. Because it's the right thing to do. I spent my life studying diseases, trying to save lives. I can't just stand by and watch someone suffer, no matter where they come from. Sorella nodded, her respect for him growing. Your kind is more complex than I expected. And yours is more human than I imagined, Carter replied with a faint smile. As they approached the facility, the tension mounted. The soldiers accompanying them were on high alert, their weapons ready. Sorella felt a pang of unease. If this mission failed, Terran's last chance would vanish. The facility loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and glass surrounded by electric fences and armed guards. Carter turned to Sorella. Let me handle this. Humans tend to panic when faced with the unknown. Sorella stayed in the shadows as Carter approached the gate, presenting his credentials and explaining their urgent need. The guards hesitated, their eyes darting toward the transport where Sorella waited. After a tense exchange, the gates finally opened. Inside, Carter worked quickly, accessing the archives and retrieving the samples he needed. But just as they were preparing to leave, alarms blared throughout the facility. They've detected the ship, one of the soldiers said, his voice tense. We need to move. Now. Sorella's heart raced as they sprinted back to the transport. Outside, a convoy of vehicles approached, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Hale's voice crackled over the radio. Get out of there. They're not friendlies. The transport roared to life, speeding the way as bullets ricocheted off its armored hull. Sorella clutched Terran's pod, her resolve hardening. This was only the beginning. To save her son, she would face anything, even humanity's darkest fears. The chase begins. The transport jolted violently as another round of gunfire pinged against its armored exterior. Inside, Dr. Evan Carter clung to his medical case containing the precious pathogen samples. Across from him, Sorella wrapped her slender arms protectively around Terran's stasis pod, her glowing eyes scanning every corner for danger. The vehicle sped through the desert under the cover of night, its tires kicking up clouds of sand as enemy vehicles closed in behind them. "This isn't just a convoy. They're equipped like a strike team," shouted Sergeant Mills, one of the soldiers tasked with protecting the group. His sharp eyes monitored the convoy in pursuit, and his hands were steady on the transport's mounted weapon. "Who the hell are they?" Carter's voice was tight with fear. "They're not regular military. Someone else knows about Sorella and wants her technology, or worse." Sorella's gaze darkened. She was no stranger to betrayal and greed. Her people had warned her of humanity's fractured alliances, but the sight of humans turning on each other over her son's life was a bitter confirmation. "They would kill my son to gain my technology," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight of sorrow and anger. "They'll have to get through us first," Mills growled, opening fire on the lead vehicle of the pursuing convoy. The Humvee spun out of control, slamming into a sand dune, but more vehicles took its place, their headlights cutting through the night like daggers. The radio crackled to life, and General Hale's stern voice filled the cabin. "Carter, report. What's your status?" "We're being chased," Carter yelled. "They're not your men, General. They're after Sorella. And the samples." There was a brief pause before Hale's voice returned, colder than before. "Get her to the safe house. I'm scrambling reinforcements, but you'll have to hold them off until we arrive." The safe house was miles away, a remote bunker built into a cliffside. The convoy would have to cross treacherous terrain to reach it. The driver pressed the accelerator harder, pushing the transport to its limits as bullets whizzed past. Sorella stood, her movements unnervingly calm for someone in such a dire situation. "I will not allow them to harm my son," she said. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small spherical device that pulsed with an otherworldly blue light. "What the hell is that?" Mills barked, his finger hesitating on the trigger. "A shield emitter," Sorella explained. "It will protect the vehicle, but only for a short time." Without waiting for approval, she pressed the device against the transport's ceiling. A shimmering energy field enveloped the vehicle just as a rocket-propelled grenade exploded nearby. The shield absorbed the blast, but the strain was visible as the device's light began to dim. "Keep moving," she urged. "The shield won't hold long." Carter marveled at the alien technology, even as adrenaline coursed through his veins. "If we survive this, you're going to have to explain how that works." Mills let out a short laugh. "If we survive, you can ask all the questions you want, Ak." The transport veered off the main road, plunging into a narrow canyon. The enemy convoy hesitated at the entrance, their larger vehicles struggling to navigate the rocky terrain. For a moment, it seemed like they might escape, but hope was short-lived. Ahead of them, another group of vehicles appeared, blocking the canyon's exit. These were different, sleeker, more advanced, and painted with insignias that Carter didn't recognize. The transport skidded to a halt, the screech of brakes echoing off the canyon walls. "We're surrounded," Mills muttered grimly. Sorella stepped out of the vehicle before anyone could stop her, her movements deliberate and unafraid. The soldiers surrounding her raised their weapons, but she ignored them. Instead, she lifted her hands in a gesture of peace, her translucent skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Do you not see the cruelty of your actions?" she called out, her voice amplified by her translator. "I came to your world in peace, seeking only help for my son. And this is how you respond." From the lead vehicle, a man emerged, his face obscured by a helmet. He removed it slowly, revealing sharp features and cold, calculating eyes. "Peace is a luxury," he said, his tone dripping with contempt. Your technology is worth more than a single life, alien. Hand it over, and maybe we'll let you leave. Sorella's eyes narrowed, her glowing pupils turning a fiery orange. You would trade a child's life for power. You are no better than the sickness that plagues my world. The man sneered. Your son's life is irrelevant. What you brought here could change the balance of power forever. Before Sorella could respond, Carter stepped forward, surprising even himself. You're insane. If you harm her or her son, you'll spark a war you can't win. The man laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the canyon. War is inevitable, Doctor. This is just the beginning. The standoff was broken by the distant roar of aircraft. General Hale's reinforcements had arrived. Fighter jets streaked across the sky, dropping flares that lit up the canyon like fireworks. The enemy forces scrambled, their vehicles retreating under the onslaught. Sorella seized the moment, activating another alien device. The burst of light disoriented the remaining attackers, giving the transport time to break through the blockade. Mills gunned the engine, the vehicle lurching forward as they sped toward the safe house. As they neared the bunker, Carter turned to Sorella. You saved us back there, but you also showed them what you're capable of. They won't stop now. I know, Sorella said, her voice quiet but resolute, but I will do whatever it takes to protect my son. The transport disappeared into the safe house just as the first light of dawn broke over the desert. Inside, Sorella looked down at Terran's fragile form. The chase had bought them time, but she knew the fight was far from over. And for the first time, she truly understood the cost of what she had set in motion. A mother's wrath. The desert sun burned high in the sky, casting long shadows over the cliffside bunker where Sorella, her son Terran, and their human allies had taken refuge. Inside the bunker, the tension was as thick as the metallic smell of the reinforced walls. General Hale's soldiers monitored the perimeter, their faces etched with suspicion and exhaustion. Meanwhile, Dr. Evan Carter worked frantically in the makeshift lab, synthesizing the serum that might save Terran. Sorella stood by the stasis pod, her glowing hands gently stroking her son's face. His condition had worsened, his breathing now barely perceptible. The sight of his frailty ignited a fierce resolve in her heart. She turned to Carter, her voice calm but edged with urgency. How much longer? She asked, her glowing eyes fixed on the human scientist. Carter didn't look up from his equipment. The serum is almost ready, just a few more hours. We may not have hours, Sorella said, glancing at the monitors displaying the bunker's security feeds. She could feel the storm brewing outside, hostility, fear, and greed swirling around her presence on this planet. Her instincts proved correct. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the bunker, the deafening blast sending tremors through the reinforced walls. Alarms blared as soldiers scrambled to their positions. Hale stormed into the lab, his face a mask of fury. We've got incoming, he barked. It's the same group that ambushed you in the canyon. They've got more firepower this time, and they're not playing games. Sorella's expression hardened. They come for my son. They will not take him. Hale pointed a finger at her. This is your fault. They wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. Carter stepped between them, his voice firm. Enough. Blaming her won't change anything. We need a plan. Hale scowled but didn't argue. We hold them off as long as we can. Reinforcements are on the way. Sorella turned to Carter. And if they breach the bunker? Carter hesitated, his jaw tightening. Then we lose everything. The reality of the situation sank in. Sorella clenched her fists, her glowing skin pulsing with an eerie light. She had tried to trust the humans, to believe in their compassion and cooperation. But now, as the enemy forces closed in, she realized she could no longer rely on them alone. I will fight, she said, her voice steady. Hale snorted. Fight? With what? You've got nothing but a stasis pod and a glowing light show. Sorella stepped closer, her tall, slender frame towering over him. "You underestimate me, General. I am a mother, and a mother will do anything to protect her child." With that, she strode toward her ship, still docked in the bunker's hangar. The soldiers watched in stunned silence as she entered the vessel, its sleek surface humming to life. Moments later, Sorella emerged, clad in a suit of advanced Xalian armor. The translucent material shimmered like liquid light, and in her hands she carried a weapon unlike anything the humans had ever seen. "What is that?" Carter asked, his voice tinged with awe. "A Xalian energy disruptor," Sorella replied. "It can disable their vehicles and weapons without killing them." Hale raised an eyebrow. "You're willing to spare them?" Sorella's gaze turned cold. "Only if they do not harm my son." The enemy forces breached the outer perimeter, their armored vehicles and drones advancing with ruthless precision. Hale's soldiers fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Sorella stepped onto the battlefield, her glowing armor catching the sunlight like a beacon. She activated the disruptor, unleashing a wave of energy that short-circuited the enemy's drones midair. The machines fell like broken birds, their metal shells scattering across the sand. The ground vehicles faltered, their engines stalling as the disruptor's energy pulse rendered them useless. The enemy soldiers hesitated, momentarily stunned by the sight of the alien mother standing defiantly before them. But their leader, the same man who had confronted Sorella in the canyon, stepped forward. "Enough games," he shouted. "You can't win, alien. Surrender, or we'll level this entire bunker." Sorella's glowing eyes locked onto him. "You threaten the life of my child. There will be no surrender." She raised her disruptor, but before she could fire, a rocket streaked through the air, heading straight for her. Time seemed to slow as the missile closed in. Sorella moved swiftly, her armor's energy shields absorbing the brunt of the explosion. She staggered but remained standing, her resolve unshaken. Inside the bunker, Carter worked furiously to complete the serum, the sound of battle growing louder with each passing second. Come on," he muttered, his hands trembling as he injected the final components into the mixture. "We're running out of time." Back on the battlefield, Sorella unleashed another wave from her disruptor, forcing the enemy soldiers to retreat. But their leader had one final card to play. He pulled out a detonator, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You think you're so powerful," he taunted. "Let's see how powerful you are when I bury your son under a mountain of rubble." Sorella's heart stopped as she realized his intent. He was willing to destroy the entire bunker, killing everyone inside, just to ensure she failed. Her glowing armor flared brighter as she raised her weapon, preparing to stop him at all costs. But before she could act, a sharp crack echoed across the battlefield. The enemy leader stumbled, a red stain blooming across his chest. He collapsed, the detonator falling from his hand. Hale lowered his rifle, his expression grim. "I may not trust you, alien," Hale said, meeting Sorella's gaze. "But I'm not about to let a psychopath blow us all to hell." The enemy forces, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. Sorella lowered her weapon, her glowing armor dimming as the adrenaline coursing through her subsided. She turned and ran back to the bunker, her thoughts consumed by one thing: Terran. Inside, Carter stood by the stasis pod, holding a syringe filled with the newly synthesized serum. "It's ready," he said, his voice trembling with both fear and hope. Sorella knelt beside her son, her hand gently brushing his cheek. "Hold on, my child," she whispered. "You will live." Carter injected the serum into Terran's fragile body, and the room fell silent, everyone holding their breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Terran's chest rose with a deep, steady breath. His glowing eyes flickered open, and Sorella's heart soared. But the battle was far from over. The humans had seen what she could do, and the cost of her defiance would echo far beyond this bunker. Sorella knew she had won a single battle, but the war to save her son and protect her people was only beginning. The ultimate sacrifice. The bunker had fallen eerily silent after the battle. The distant rumble of retreating enemy vehicles faded into the horizon, but the tension inside the steel walls remained suffocating. Sorella knelt by Terran's stasis pod, her fingers trembling as she touched his face. The serum had worked. Her son was breathing deeply, his glow slowly returning. Relief coursed through her, but it was fleeting. The danger was far from over. Dr. Carter wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the medical table, exhaustion etched into his face. "He's stable for now," he said, his voice hoarse. "But his immune system will take time to recover. We're not out of the woods yet." Sorella's glowing eyes met Carter's. "You saved him. For that, I owe you more than I can express." Before Carter could reply, General Hale stormed into the room, his boots echoing on the metal floor. "We need to talk," he said brusquely, his gaze hard and unforgiving. Sorella stood, her posture regal despite her exhaustion. "What is it, General?" Hale crossed his arms. "That attack wasn't just about your son. They wanted your ship, your tech, everything you brought here. And they won't stop. You've brought a storm to our doorstep, and it's only a matter of time before it tears us apart." "I did not choose this," Sorella replied, her voice steady. "I came here to save my son, nothing more. Your people made this a war." Hale's jaw tightened. "Regardless of intent, the fact remains. You're a threat. Every world government will want a piece of what you've got. Some will want to study you. Others will want to destroy you. The safest option, for all of us, is for you to leave." Sorella's gaze softened as she looked at Terran, who was still resting peacefully. "I will not leave until my son is strong enough to survive the journey." Hale's expression darkened. "Then you better hurry." Hours later, in the bunker's dimly lit communications room, Sorella accessed her ship's long-range transmitters. The Xalian Council had forbidden contact with Earth, but the situation had become dire. If her people knew what she had done, and the risks she had taken, they might intervene. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the controls. Would they help her, or would they turn their backs, leaving her to face humanity's wrath alone? She composed a message, her voice heavy with urgency. "This is Sorella, daughter of the Xalian Council. I have disobeyed our laws to save my son. I seek asylum for him and myself. Earth is not safe for us. If you receive this message, please respond." She sent the transmission into the void, hoping against hope that someone would answer. Meanwhile, Carter sat in the bunker's main hall, surrounded by soldiers who eyed him with suspicion. He knew the situation was spiraling out of control. Sorella's presence had sparked chaos, and he feared what might come next. As he stared at the concrete floor, one of Hale's men approached him. "Doc," the soldier said quietly, "you need to see this." Carter followed the soldier to a security terminal where live satellite feeds displayed a fleet of unmarked aircraft heading toward their location. Carter's stomach dropped. "That's not Hale's reinforcements, is it?" The soldier shook his head grimly. "No, and they're not friendly." The room erupted into action as alarms blared. Hale entered, barking orders to fortify the bunker. "They found us," he growled. "Everyone to defensive positions." In the chaos, Sorella sensed something was wrong. She returned to the central chamber, where Carter intercepted her. "We've got company," he said urgently. "And it's not the same group as before. These guys are equipped like a private army." Sorella's glowing eyes narrowed. "They will not stop until they have what they want." Carter hesitated, then spoke softly. "There might be another way. If you surrender, if you give them what they want, it might buy enough time to save Terran." "No," Sorella snapped, her voice fierce. "I will not abandon my son. I will not let them take me." Carter placed a hand on her arm. "You won't abandon him. You'll protect him. If they think they have you, they'll leave the bunker. You're the prize, not him." Sorella's anger melted into a deep sadness. "You ask me to sacrifice myself." "I'm asking you to save your son," Carter replied, his voice steady. "I'll do everything I can to keep him safe. But right now, they need a distraction. You're the only one who can give it to them." The attack began as explosions rocked the bunker, sending debris raining down. Sorella stepped forward, her glowing armor shimmering in the dim light. She turned to Carter, her expression resolute. "Promise me," she said, her voice breaking. "Promise me you'll protect him." "I swear," Carter said, his eyes filled with determination. "I won't let anything happen to him." With that, Sorella activated her ship's systems, triggering a surge of energy that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The enemy forces momentarily faltered, their equipment disrupted by the alien technology. Sorella strode out into the chaos, her presence a beacon of defiance. "Come for me if you dare," she called out, her voice amplified by the translator. "But know this, you will never have my son." The enemy forces redirected their assault, converging on her position. Sorella fought with the grace and power of a mother protecting everything she loved. Her disruptor sent vehicles crashing and drones spiraling out of control. But even as she held them at bay, she knew she couldn't last forever. Inside the bunker, Carter worked frantically to stabilize Terran's condition. Hale's soldiers covered the exits, their weapons trained on the advancing enemy. The sounds of battle grew louder, and Carter's heart pounded with fear. Outside, Sorella faced the enemy's leader once more. His smirk was gone, replaced by a grim determination. "You can't win," he said coldly. "Surrender, and I'll make this painless." Sorella's armor glowed brighter than ever. "You underestimate a mother's love." With one final surge of energy, she unleashed the full power of her technology, creating a blinding explosion that enveloped the battlefield. The enemy forces scattered, their vehicles and weapons rendered useless. But the cost was steep. Sorella collapsed to her knees, her energy spent. As the dust settled, Carter emerged from the bunker, carrying Terran in his arms. He rushed to Sorella's side, his voice shaking. "We need to get you out of here." Sorella smiled weakly. "No, Dr. Carter. My son is safe now. That is all that matters." Before Carter could protest, a faint glow surrounded Sorella, her body disintegrating into particles of light. She had activated the Xalian self-sacrifice mechanism, ensuring her technology would never fall into the wrong hands. As the light faded, Carter held Terran tightly, tears streaming down his face. The war was over, but the price had been unimaginable. And in the silence that followed, the world bore witness to the ultimate sacrifice of a mother's love. Humanity's choice. The world awoke to the aftermath of the battle at the bunker. News drones had captured the fiery skies, the retreat of private militias, and the blinding explosion that marked the end of the alien mother's stand. The images of Sorella's glowing armor, her defiance in the face of overwhelming odds, and her ultimate sacrifice dominated headlines, sparking a global frenzy. Inside the bunker, Dr. Evan Carter sat beside Terran's recovery pod, exhaustion etched deep into his features. The young Xalian boy was stable now, his glow returning to its full strength. Carter watched him breathe, the weight of Sorella's final words heavy on his mind. "She gave everything for him," Carter muttered to himself. "Now it's on me to make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." A divided world. Across the globe, humanity was split. Some viewed Sorella's actions as proof of alien nobility, a selfless mother who had come in peace. Others saw it as a harbinger of danger, warning that alien contact could lead to more conflict. Protests erupted in major cities. Some held signs that read, "Welcome the stars," while others screamed, "Protect Earth at any cost." In an emergency session of the United Nations, world leaders debated the ramifications of the incident. Footage of Sorella's last stand played on repeat in the background, her glowing figure a haunting reminder of the sacrifices made. General Marcus Hale stood before the council, his tone unyielding. "We cannot ignore what happened. She brought advanced technology to Earth, technology that could destabilize everything we've built. We need to secure her ship, her weapons, and that boy." Dr. Carter, sitting in the gallery as an invited expert, couldn't stay silent. "That boy is her son," he snapped, standing abruptly. "He's not a weapon. He's a child, and he's the last piece of her legacy. If we exploit him, we're no better than the people who attacked her." The room fell silent. Hale glared at Carter, but didn't respond. Instead, the council moved to a vote. Should the Xalian boy be handed over to international authorities for study, or should he remain under Carter's care? The hidden message. Back at the bunker, Carter worked tirelessly. With Hale's men guarding the site, he had little freedom, but he refused to leave Terran's side. As he reviewed Sorella's ship's systems, a new alert flashed on the console. A message. Carter leaned closer, his heart racing. The Xalian characters translated themselves into a holographic image of Sorella. Her soft, glowing visage filled the room, her voice calm but resolute. "Dr. Carter," the message began, "if you are seeing this, I am no longer alive. I entrust my son's future to you. Protect him as I would. But know this, humanity now stands at a crossroads." Her image turned solemn. "My ship contains more than just technology. It carries the knowledge of my people, knowledge that could heal your world or destroy it. It is locked now, but Terran holds the key. He is the only one who can access it when the time is right. Guard him well, for there are those who will seek to exploit his gift." The message ended abruptly, leaving Carter reeling. Sorella had entrusted him not just with Terran's life, but with a burden of unimaginable magnitude. The standoff. The situation at the bunker grew more volatile as factions closed in. Hale's forces weren't the only ones interested in Terran. Rogue agents and private armies lurked on the outskirts, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Inside, Hale pressed Carter for answers. "What was in that message?" Hale demanded. Carter hesitated, his mind racing. If Hale knew about the knowledge Sorella had mentioned, he would stop at nothing to control it. "It was just a goodbye," Carter lied. "A mother saying farewell to her son." Hale's eyes narrowed, but before he could press further, the perimeter alarms blared. An armed group had breached the outer defenses, their intent clear: capture the alien boy. Carter grabbed Terran's pod and ran. Soldiers scrambled to their positions, gunfire erupting as the bunker became a battlefield once more. But this time, Carter wasn't staying to watch. Humanity's choice. Using a secret escape route Sorella's ship had revealed, Carter fled the bunker with Terran. The boy stirred as they emerged into the open desert, his glowing eyes opening for the first time. "Where is my mother?" Terran asked, his voice weak but clear. Carter knelt beside him, his heart breaking. "She's gone, Terran. But she saved you. She gave everything so you could live." Terran's glowing eyes filled with tears, but he nodded, as if he understood. "She said to trust you." Carter felt a surge of resolve. "And I won't let her down." In the days that followed, Carter contacted sympathetic scientists, journalists, and world leaders, revealing the truth about Sorella's sacrifice. The public's response was overwhelming. Stories of the alien mother's bravery spread like wildfire, and protests demanding Terran's protection grew in size and intensity. Under immense pressure, the United Nations ruled in favor of granting Terran asylum under Carter's care. Hale, begrudgingly, stepped back, his plans to control the situation thwarted by global outrage. A new beginning. Weeks later, Carter stood outside a remote sanctuary far from prying eyes. Terran, now recovering fully, played in the grass, his laughter echoing through the quiet valley. Carter watched him, a mix of relief and determination in his heart. The world was still fractured, fear and greed still loomed, but for the first time, Carter felt hope. Sorella's legacy had sparked something unexpected in humanity, a willingness to choose compassion over power. As Terran ran toward him, Carter thought of Sorella's final words. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and looked up at the stars. "We'll make her proud," he whispered. "Together." In the vast expanse of the universe, humanity had been given a choice. And for once, they had chosen right.